Welcome to the Existential Empath Podcast. My name is Tanya, and I am an intuitive empath. My intention is to share valuable tools and techniques that I have learned so you can tap into your own inner healer naturally and intuitively. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Today I'm going to talk about our throat chakra. I'm recognizing with many of my clients and even some of the guests on my podcast that we are talking about how many of us are beginning to activate and open up our throat chakras. So, the throat chakra is the fifth chakra and it's located at the base of the neck, and it is responsible for our honest communication and our authenticity. And it is also the center of our creativity. And so when our throat chakra is blocked off, we may be struggling with speaking up. We could be having a difficult time speaking our truth or communicating our feelings. We might be feeling that we don't have a valuable opinion or story to share. And we might want to begin to show up as our authentic self, but we might not feel comfortable doing so. And so, our throat chakra is that center of expression because it speaks our inner truth. And many of us are beginning to awaken to our inner truths. We have been, maybe in the past we've been speaking something that is not our truth, or maybe we've been speaking our parents' truth, or our coworkers' truth, or our family or a friend's truth, but we have not been able to speak our own truth. And we don't always feel comfortable doing so because we're afraid of what may happen. And so, when we physically speak, it actually activates our central nervous system, the larynx and the vocal cords, and the throat chakra is also accompanied with the ears and our endocrine system. So, our thyroid gland, our thymus gland. And it's responsible for transforming our thoughts into forms of information, and we can communicate that out into the universe. And I talk about that often, how our thoughts are electric, our emotions are magnetic, and then our voice is a broadcast system or an amplifier. And so, what might disrupt our throat chakra? Many things, actually. So, criticism being one of them. Maybe as a child, we received criticism. And, when we would speak our truth, we were told to be quiet, or we were told to just kind of, not speak until spoken to. So, a lot of things that could play into this are based off of our childhood experiences. And, the health of our throat chakra, it is linked to us speaking openly and honestly when we can express ourselves. And if we were shut down many times as children to not be able to express ourselves, then we will begin to hold our tongue or, not speak anymore out of fear of being criticized, rejected, or judged. And so, our biggest challenge affecting the throat chakra is expressing our truth and doing that regardless of fear or judgment or not being accepted by others. And many of us as empaths, that's a key factor right there. We always want to be accepted by others. And so when we speak out on our own in an authentic and genuine way, and it may not resonate with others, and then they kind of project back to us judgment and criticism, it makes us want to kind of go back into our shell, back into our little hermit shell. And it can be scary sometimes when we stand out. And we might be unique or different from others. We might be breaking free from the matrix, so to speak. And, we are finding ourselves in a different timeline or a different reality than others. And it can be really scary to put ourselves out there. And so, some ways that we can show up in this world, in an authentic way, is to speak our truth and to show our own personal expression. And, we don't want to shut down that throat chakra because that also shuts down our listening and our hearing. And so, as I was a child, I didn't speak much at all. But I listened a lot. I had a very strong clairaudience and I could hear through dimensions, through other realms. And some of my friends actually remember me holding my ears all the time, saying, "It's too loud, it's too loud." And I honestly don't remember that. But, I remember times, my mom's throat chakra was closed off for many years in her childhood. So she had a very active throat chakra, which then made me feel like I could not activate mine. It was more just kind of listening to what she had to say, and I never really got a chance to speak up. And so then, as I got out of the household, in my early 20s, I began to become very active in my throat chakra. So then I was over speaking and over utilizing it and not listening, as much. I was kind of more the aggressor when it came to speaking up because my voice was never heard, as a child, where then my mom's voice was never heard as a child. So it kind of played out in our generational patterns. And it wasn't until my 30s when I really recognized that I need to sit back and listen more. And I think that the job that I had working in healthcare, where I was working with grieving families, kind of forced me to do that. I had to sit and listen and be present and hold space for other people. And that taught me how um, in the silence, there's power. And I remember when I was married, it was funny because I grew up in a family where, my mom talked a lot. And I was really used to having that, at dinner time, we would kind of sit there and there was always sound going, there was always someone speaking. And then when I got married, his family was very quiet. And I remember sitting there at the dinner table and no one was speaking. And it felt so awkward for me to be in the silence. And I always felt like I needed to fill that silence with talking. And then as time went on, I began to recognize that there's power in silence, that calmness, that sense of peace. And so I now, enjoy that. I enjoy the silence almost more than I enjoy filling the space with the noise and the talking. And so, the glands in the neck are, very affected by whether we're over speaking or under speaking. So if you have thyroid issues, or thymus issues, or any laryngitis, bronchitis, any issues in the throat or the neck, or even the upper chest area, it could be that your throat chakra is a little out of balance or out of alignment. And so, that's where those hormones come into play as well, when we're talking about our thyroid gland. And, if we have an excessive fear of speaking out, it can definitely affect our thyroid. And so, many people in the world today have issues with their thyroid gland. And so when we think of the throat chakra, we think of the color blue. I've talked about Anthony Williams in the medical medium often, and he talks a lot about how to heal the thyroid gland, and wild blueberries are one of them. And so when we correlate a color, with our chakra system, we can actually heal those areas. So bringing more blue into our lives, whether that's wearing blue, painting blue, in your home, or eating more blue, or visualizing more blue. Those are some very simple things that we can do to unblock our throat chakras. So, when our throat chakras block, some of the physical things that can manifest would be, of course, thyroid issues, laryngitis, sore throats, asthma, fatigue, anemia. Some other areas that you might recognize if you have a underactive or even overactive throat chakra would be, maybe you're struggling to find the right words to say, or you bite your tongue often, or you swallow your words, or you might feel afraid to talk or express yourself when you are around others out of fear of being judged or criticized. You might feel that believing that if you express yourself, that it's pointless. You're like, I share how I feel and no one cares. I went through that for a long time. I had a difficult time with that. Especially when I first started my podcast, I was like, does anybody even care? Does anybody even care what I have to say? And as I began to heal my throat, I noticed that my hearing got better as well because they are in sync. They are in alignment with one another. And so when we have that balance, we can balance out how much we talk and how much we listen. And allowing others to verbally abuse us or dominate us, that's another sign If there's people in your life that continually verbally abuse you or dominate you when you try to speak out and they cut you off or they interrupt you, it's obvious that they also have an imbalanced throat chakra, maybe an overactive one, where then if you're not speaking out or you're fearful of speaking out, then yours may be underactive. And, just being afraid of expressing your opinion, maybe out of fear of being criticized or ridiculed or judged, can be very difficult. And, feeling, an itch in the throat as well. Maybe you have an incessant cough or a tickle in your throat. Or I recognize this often when I'm around people or I work with clients. This just happened to me actually last week. I was with a gal who I hadn't met before. I had actually been asked to go over and clear some of her land. And immediately I started coughing excessively. And I said, I don't know what's wrong. I keep coughing. I think I'm clearing someone's throat. And she looks at me and she goes, You've got to be kidding me. She goes, I actually just made an appointment to go to an ear, nose, and throat doctor because I'm having some issues with my throat. And so I, as an intuitive empath, was picking up on that immediately. So we did some work through that, for her to help her move through some of that blocks, in her throat. And she kind of explained that in her life, she feels like her opinion isn't able to be expressed. She doesn't feel like she's being heard. And so these things were happening to her on a very deep subconscious level. And, you might feel guilty for expressing your needs or wants. And, that can be really hard. It's like, okay, I'm feeling this way, or I'm struggling with this situation, but I feel really guilty for speaking up and I'm afraid, to speak up. And so, when we move through that, it will bring things to the surface that need to be healed. And, when we are struggling with our throat chakra, it will also affect our nervous system. And that can lead to anxiety or depression because we aren't able to express ourselves in a healthy way. And so, if you feel like you're being misunderstood, or you're even afraid of conflict, that's another reason why we don't speak up because I look at that in my family dynamic. My dad has said that to me many times that I'm afraid to share how I feel because I get yelled at, and so that was from his mom, and then moving on into his relationships, he was manifesting that as well. And so, we oftentimes as empaths, we avoid controversy and we have a difficult time, wanting to share how we feel out of fear of having some sort of conflict arise. And it could even be the flip side. Maybe you're overly aggressive and domineering and, you want to start a conflict in order to resolve issues. And this was my younger self. I felt like in my relationships, I would get stagnant or frustrated. And so I would start a conflict just to get the ball rolling, just so I could have movement in the relationship because I was always with people that avoided conflict too. And so, in order to have a conversation, I felt the need to start conflict in order to get something resolved, which is a very unhealthy way, to deal with things. So, what are some signs of a balanced throat chakra? You're comfortable asking for, what you want and what you need. You're comfortable sharing your opinion. You're comfortable expressing yourself in a healthy way. And, you have a very healthy ability to communicate your desires, your feelings, your thoughts, and you're doing it in a clear and confident way. And I think that's important because if you're speaking out in confidence, but you're not being aggressive, you're just speaking out in a very, assertive way, but not in an aggressive way. That's very healthy. And you can easily communicate from your heart space and not have to feel like aren't being valued and that you aren't speaking from sincerity or from an intimate standpoint, even as well. This can also bleed off into our intimate relationships if we aren't speaking up. Maybe, in your romantic relationships, maybe your physical interactions aren't where you want them to be, and you're having a hard time expressing, what feels good to you, or how you want to be intimate in the bedroom. And I often have clients that struggle in this area. They've been married for years and they've never had an orgasm, or they have never been pleasured in a way that they want, that they feel that they need. And it's out of that fear of speaking up and sharing, what their wants are, what their desires are, what their needs are. So this can really kind of play out into all different areas of our lives, whether it's your job and maybe you want a raise, but you're afraid to ask for one. Maybe you don't feel that you're worthy of it or deserving of it, that you've been kind of like a doormat or a people pleaser, or you've been walked on in your job and you're not feeling confident to speak up and say, hey, I'm feeling undervalued, or I'm feeling unworthy of the money, that I'm receiving in this position. Or, you know, when you have an open throat chakra or a balanced throat chakra, you have healthy boundaries and you say, hey, this isn't working out for me. And or let's work through this. Let's get to a point where we're both happy with the boundaries that we, have set here, whether it's in your job or in your relationships. And, you have an easier time talking about your feelings. I know for me, once I started to open up my throat again, I was more aggressive with how I was sharing my feelings. And I knew that I was finding my voice. And I remember one situation where it was a time in my life where I had been, in my marriage, my voice had been shut off. And I kind of just sat back and, allowed someone else to kind of take the wheel on things. And I didn't really share my opinion anymore because it was almost like I felt like, when they say they break elephant spirits, I kind of felt like my spirit had been broken in that relationship. So I was afraid of speaking up or speaking out. But once I got out of that relationship, I became very controlling in my other relationships out of fear of being controlled because that's what I had experienced in that long term marriage. And so it took many years for me to heal that. And I had one instance where I finally started to speak up and I finally started to coordinate some things. And I was moving forward in my new business and in my new relationships. And I had one woman tell me to shut up. She said, just be quiet. You talk too much, or, you're just too much. And I kind of had to sit back. And at first, I wanted to be upset. I just wanted to cry. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't realize that," But then I kind of had to sit back and really honor myself, because I was the opposite before. I was that quiet one, in my relationships, and then I had switched and pivoted to being the more talkative one. And so now it's like I am understanding that there's a healthy balance between both, and understanding that when you do begin to find your voice, oftentimes you over find your voice and it takes some time to balance that out. And that's okay. That's okay. It's just really um, kind of consciously being more aware that that's what's happening and not beating yourself up over it. So, what are some things that you can do to heal your throat chakra? One thing that I love doing is humming or singing. That will definitely open up the flow of energy and, just warming up your voice, however that may be. I love to resonant tune, and I've talked about this in some of my previous podcasts. That, if you listen to certain frequencies and then you hum and you resonant tune to them, it will actually activate not only your throat, but your third eye as well, and your heart. And so it really aligns your chakras. And when you listen to different frequencies, I love 144 hertz. That's one that I like to listen to. I listen to it with headphones, and then I kind of just hum, and I can feel in my body the vibration between my throat and the tone, so I know when I'm in harmony. And for those of you who might be singers out there, you'll understand that as well. That when you harmonize with someone, you kind of feel that vibration, moving through your body. Reading out loud is another really good thing that you can do. It's just really activating that throat. And what you may notice is if you've had a closed throat chakra for a long time and you begin to sing or speak more, you might feel a little soreness in your throat because you're activating some of the muscles and some of the energy within that chakra. And it's going to take a little bit of time for it to um, kind of build the muscle around that. And so, you can do neck exercises. Those are really good. There's many different yoga poses that you can do. I know the cobra is a good one. It's where you lay on your chest and push your arms up and stretch your neck all the way back. That's an excellent one to open up your throat chakra. Being honest. You wouldn't even imagine that being honest and being genuine and speaking in your authenticity will highly activate your throat chakra. Expressing your creativity, that's another one. Just really opening yourself up because the throat is also our creative center as well. And you can do breathing exercises, deep breathing exercises. Um, you can write letters. Okay, so this is where you might not actively be using your throat, but if you write letters to people and with not even the intention of giving them to people or sending them to people, but actually just expressing how you feel, and then you can burn those letters. It's like kind of releasing the pressure cooker a bit, where you can express how you feel in a safe space and then release that energy. So, it's really up to you if you want to give that letter to the person or not. But I've done this many times where I felt the need to express something to someone. And I've done it in two ways. I've done it through writing a letter and then burning the letter. And I've also done it in a form of what's called spirit to spirit. And so I've done it in the shower where I'll have a conversation with this person's spirit, not there physically, but they're here on the earth plane physically, but I'm not in their vicinity having the physical conversation, but I'm having it on a spirit to spirit or more of an energetic level. And I have been able to really successfully move some of the energy out of my body by doing that. Just having the conversation with the person, but them not physically being there is very, very healing in itself. And so, you can also have a dialogue with your inner child, and you can do the same. You can either write it out or verbally have that conversation. And so, these are areas that can really help us heal and move forward when we have these blocks within our voice and speaking up and allowing ourselves to share uh, in a way that is from our heart. And it can take a little bit of time. And like I said, when I work with people, I immediately could pick up on if they have an underactive or an overactive throat chakra. And lately I've been recognizing a lot of my clients are really struggling in that area. And so we're all beginning to come forward. And when I work with the quantum healing sessions, I recognize too our past lives play a major role in this. There was a reason why, many were hung during the Salem witch trials, and that affected our throats. Or maybe there was, this is even funny. I even had a client who her throat chakra was so blocked off. We did a quantum healing session with her and found out that she was actually a dragon in a past life that was chained up or shackled around its neck. And I'm telling you, when I cleared that past life, when I got in there and cleared that energetically, she coughed for about 10 minutes, almost choking and gagging. It was intense how deeply rooted her throat chakra was shut off. And that was probably my most, impactful uh, clearing that I had from a past life that I actually remember. And I was like flabbergasted by it because this woman was like immediately after that, she became a new person. It was like she was standing more in her power. She was more confident in herself. Her relationships were changing. She was kind of being really stuck in these very abusive relationships. And after we cleared her throat chakra, she began to attract more loving relationships into her life. So it's amazing how, when we actually can dive deeper into our generational patterns or into those past or even parallel lives, how deeply we can heal things. And so, uh, you know, I hope that this podcast was valuable to those of you out there who might be having a difficult time expressing yourself. And, just be gentle with yourself and do things that can help activate your throat. And if you have an overactive throat, if you feel like you're the one talking all the time, then do some practices or exercises to encourage more listening, more active listening. And this is how I kind of taught myself to balance mine out as well. I would catch myself over talking. And then I began to sit back and say, okay, I'm going to listen more. I'm going to listen. And through that listening, I began to find my own revelations and my own healing in that process. And my ears, it was funny. The job I used to have about 10 years ago, one of the executive directors had actually mentioned to my boss that she asked if I had a hearing problem because I talk loudly and don't listen well. And when my boss told me that, I thought, oh my goodness, I think I kind of do have a hearing problem a little bit because in my childhood, I would shut things off. When you're around someone who has an overactive throat chakra, you often want to shut off your hearing or you create selective hearing. And that's exactly what I did. And without even knowing that subconsciously, I began to talk louder and louder because I couldn't hear as well. And so when that came to my attention is when I really started to recognize I needed to work on my listening skills. And when I began to do that, I noticed that my hearing got better. And so those are just some simple ways that we can consciously be more aware of, how we're presenting ourselves and how we're utilizing our voice in a very healthy, balanced, and harmonious way. So again, I hope that this was valuable to, those of you out there, and I send you all so much healing and so much uplifting energy. And if you'd like to schedule a session, with me, feel free to visit my website. Right now I'm doing podcasts on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I've got sessions open on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. But if you're overseas, I do have, my scheduling system actually will show you whatever time zone you're in, the availability of the time zone that I'm in. So don't worry about that. If I say Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you're in Australia and it's Tuesday, Thursday, don't worry about that. You can just kind of jump on and it'll show you based off of your time zone. Because I've had a few people reach out to me about that because I have listeners all over the world. So again, I share, so much uplifting energy with each and every one of you. And I send you blue energy today. Okay. Blue energy to activate and open up and balance and harmonize your throat chakras. Take care. You deserve to navigate your life as an empath in alignment with health, happiness, and abundance. To learn more about the services that I provide, including Beyond Quantum Healing Hypnosis, EFT Tapping, and the Emotion Code, visit my website at www.thesoulcafe.org.